My name is Natalie Parker, and I'm 32 years old. I'll never forget the day I came home from work to find my living room completely empty. The custom sectional, artisan coffee table, designer reading chair all gone. My neighbor mentioned seeing my mother and sister with a moving truck earlier. My own mother had stolen my furniture, $13,800 worth of it, while I was at work, and apparently gifted it to my younger sister Heather. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, where are you watching from today? If this has already hooked you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life storytellers. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this family betrayal unfolded and what I did about it. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you need to know a bit about my family dynamics. Growing up with my mother Diane, now 58, and my younger sister Heather, who's 28, was always a challenge. From as early as I can remember, there was a clear favorite in our household, and it certainly wasn't me. My mother is what many would call a narcissist, though it took years of therapy for me to recognize this pattern. Heather was her golden child, while I was often overlooked or, worse, blamed when things went wrong. When we were kids, Heather would receive expensive toys for no particular occasion, while I was told to be grateful for hand-me-downs. During high school, my mother attended every one of Heather's choir performances, but made excuses to miss my debate competitions, even when I made it to state finals. Heather just needs more support, my mother would say. She's more sensitive than you. You're so independent, Natalie. Independence wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. I learned early that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. This pattern became painfully obvious when my father passed away when I was 15. Dad had always been my buffer, the one person who seemed to see the unfair treatment and would try, often unsuccessfully, to balance things out. After his death, things got worse. He'd left a modest inheritance that was supposed to help both of us with college. Somehow, most of that money went toward Heather's education at a private university, while I was told there wasn't enough left for me. "You can get loans," my mother said dismissively. "You're smart enough for scholarships." I did get partial scholarships, but I also worked 30 hours a week throughout college while maintaining a 3.8 gigapascals in my interior design program. Meanwhile, Heather changed majors 3 times, took 6 years to graduate with a communications degree, and never held a job during school because she needed to focus on her studies. After college, I started at an entry-level position at a design firm in Boston and worked my way up over the years. Every promotion was the result of long hours and dedicated effort. No one handed me anything. 3 months ago, my hard work finally paid off with a promotion to senior designer. The position came with a substantial bonus, which I decided to use to furnish my apartment properly for the first time. My apartment had been sparsely decorated for years, functional but nothing special. With my bonus, I could finally invest in quality pieces that reflected my design aesthetic. I spent weeks researching, measuring, and selecting each item. The centerpiece was a custom sectional in a rich emerald velvet that cost $6,200. I added an artisan coffee table made of reclaimed wood and steel for $2,400, a designer reading chair with ottoman for $3,100, and various smaller pieces, side tables, lamps, artwork, and accessories that totaled another $2,100. The day everything was delivered and arranged was one of the proudest moments of my life. I took photos and invited my mother and sister over to see my newly furnished space. Their reactions should have been a warning. "It seems excessive," my mother said, running her hand over the sectional. "For someone who lives alone, do you really need all this space?" Heather was even more direct. "Must be nice to have money to blow on furniture when some of us can barely make rent." Heather had recently moved back to Boston after a failed attempt at a marketing career in New York. She'd been staying with our mother for 2 months while figuring out her next move and had just signed a lease on an apartment she could barely afford. I had offered to help her look for places within her budget, but both she and my mother dismissed my suggestions as settling for less than Heather deserves. I should have recognized the jealousy in their reactions, but I was too caught up in my own excitement to see the danger signs. That oversight would cost me $13,800 and much more in emotional damage. The day everything happened started like any other Tuesday. I had an important client meeting scheduled for 1 p.m., a potential contract for redesigning the lobby and common areas of a luxury condominium building downtown. This project could be a game changer for my career, potentially leading to more high-profile commercial work. I was reviewing my presentation materials at my desk when my phone started buzzing with calls from my mother. I declined the first call since I was in the middle of work, but she called again immediately. Then again, I texted her quickly. "In work meetings all day. Can I call you tonight?" Her response was immediate. "It's an emergency. Need to talk now." My stomach dropped. Despite our complicated relationship, she was still my mother, and the word emergency triggered immediate concern. I stepped into the hallway and called her back. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm having chest pains," she said, her voice weak. "I might need to go to the hospital, but Heather's at a job interview. I don't want to call an ambulance because of the cost." I looked at my watch. My presentation was in 45 minutes, and I had spent weeks preparing for it. "Mom, if you're having chest pains, you need to call 911 right now. Don't wait." "No," she insisted. "I just need someone to drive me. Can you come? Please, Natalie." The guilt was overwhelming, but I knew this presentation could determine whether I got the project. "Mom, I can't leave right now. I have an extremely important client meeting. Call 911, and I'll meet you at the hospital as soon as my meeting is over." "Never mind," she said coldly. "I'll figure something out. I wouldn't want to inconvenience you." The call ended, and I stood in the hallway feeling like the worst daughter in the world. I sent her another text. "Please call 911 if you're in pain. I'll check in as soon as my meeting ends at 2:30. Throughout my presentation, my phone kept vibrating with texts. I tried to focus on the clients, but my mind kept wandering to my mother. Was she really having a medical emergency? The texts kept coming. "Don't worry about me. I'll just suffer alone." Some daughters would care enough to help. By the time my meeting ended successfully, despite my distraction, there were no more texts. I called my mother immediately, but there was no answer. I tried Heather, but she didn't pick up either. Increasingly worried, I decided to leave work early and check on my mother. I drove straight to her house, but no one was home. I called both of them repeatedly with no response. Finally, feeling slightly relieved that they weren't at the hospital, I headed to my apartment. The moment I opened my door, I knew something was wrong. The entryway seemed larger, more echoey. I stepped into my living room and froze. The space was completely empty. My beautiful sectional, gone. The artisan coffee table, gone. My reading chair and ottoman, gone. Even the decorative pillows and throw blankets had disappeared. For a moment, I wondered if I'd been robbed, but there was no sign of forced entry. My electronics, TV, laptop, sound system were all untouched. Only the furniture was missing. I called my neighbor, Lisa, hands shaking as I dialed. "Hey, Lisa, this is going to sound strange, but did you see anyone at my apartment today?" "Oh, your mom and sister were here with a moving truck," she said casually. "I assumed you were helping them move some things. They had your key and everything." My blood ran cold. I thanked Lisa and hung up, then immediately called my mother again. This time, she answered on the first ring. "Where is my furniture?" I demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "Oh, Natalie, don't be dramatic," she said, sounding completely fine. No sign of the chest pains from earlier. "Heather needed furniture for her new place, and you have such nice things. I knew you wouldn't mind helping your sister out." "Wouldn't mind? You stole my furniture. I paid for those pieces with my own money." "It's not stealing when it's family," my mother replied calmly. "Besides, Heather needs it more than you do. You can afford to replace it with your fancy job. Heather's just starting out." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The medical emergency, the guilt trip, it had all been a calculated distraction to get me out of the apartment, and I had fallen for it. I want my furniture back. Today, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Don't be selfish, Natalie. It's just a loan anyway. When Heather gets on her feet, you can have it back. A loan? You didn't ask to borrow anything. You lied about having chest pains to keep me away while you robbed me. Now you're being hysterical, my mother said dismissively. This is why I didn't ask, because I knew you'd overreact. Heather's moving in tomorrow, and she needed furniture. As her sister, you should want to help her. I ended the call before I said something I might regret. Sitting on my bare living room floor, surrounded by the outlines in the carpet where my furniture had been, I felt a mixture of rage, betrayal, and devastation washing over me. I sat on my empty living room floor for about 20 minutes, cycling through disbelief, fury, and heartbreak. Then, almost on autopilot, I got back in my car and drove to my mother's house. I needed to confront them face to face. I needed to see them look me in the eye while they justified stealing from me. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Heather's car parked outside. Good. They were both there. I didn't even bother knocking. I still had a key to my childhood home, and I used it, pushing the door open with enough force that it banged against the wall. Natalie! My mother jumped up from the couch where she and Heather had been sitting, looking at something on Heather's laptop. What do you think you're doing, barging in like that? Where is my furniture? I demanded, standing in the center of the living room, hands clenched into fists at my sides. It's at the storage unit, Heather said casually. The movers are bringing it to my place tomorrow morning. Want to see pictures of how I'm planning to arrange it? She turned her laptop toward me, showing a floor plan of her new apartment with my furniture placed throughout. The audacity was stunning. That's my furniture. I paid for it with my money. You had no right to take it. Oh, stop being so selfish, my mother said, waving dismissively. Heather just got her first real apartment. She can't afford nice things yet. And I could? I shot back. I worked for years to be able to buy those pieces. No one gave them to me. Heather rolled her eyes. You can just buy more with your fancy job. It's not like you don't have the money. That's not the point. You stole from me. We borrowed, my mother corrected. Family helps family, Natalie. You should know that. Borrowing requires asking permission. You lied about having a medical emergency to keep me away from my apartment, then used my spare key to rob me. My mother's eyes narrowed. I've always had a key to your apartment for emergencies, which you used to commit theft. How is that okay in your mind? It's not theft, my mother insisted. It's redistribution. Heather needs help getting started, and you can afford to help her. I turned to Heather. Did you know she lied about having chest pains to distract me today? A flicker of something guilt perhaps crossed Heather's face before she shrugged. She said you wouldn't understand if we just asked. Because what you're doing is wrong and illegal. Oh, please, my mother scoffed. Are you really going to call the police on your own mother and sister over some furniture? It's not just some furniture. It's $13,800 worth of custom pieces that I saved for and carefully selected. And it's the principle. You can't just take whatever you want from me because you think Heather deserves it more. As I looked around the room, I noticed several of my smaller items already in use in my mother's house. Throw pillows I'd bought to accent my sectional, a small abstract painting that had hung above my reading chair, even the hand-blown glass bowl that had been on my coffee table. You took those too? I pointed at the items, my voice rising in disbelief. Heather said they wouldn't go with her color scheme, my mother said with a shrug. So I kept a few things. They look better here anyway. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just about helping Heather, my mother had helped herself to my belongings too. I want everything back, I said firmly. All of it, tomorrow. That's not happening, my mother replied, equally firm. Heather needs furniture, and these pieces are perfect for her new place. Why can't you be happy for your sister instead of being so selfish? Selfish? I'm selfish for wanting my own property returned to me? Yes, my mother was shouting now. Family supports each other. But you've always been jealous of Heather, Always resented any little thing she got that you didn't. Little thing? You stole thousands of dollars worth of my property. And if you keep making a fuss about it, my mother threatened, you can consider yourself cut off from this family entirely. Is furniture really worth that, Natalie? Is it worth losing your only family? The threat hung in the air between us. Even knowing how toxic our relationship was, the idea of being cut off completely still had power over me. I had no other family, no cousins nearby, no surviving grandparents. Despite everything, these two women were my only blood relatives. But in that moment, looking at them both, my mother's righteous indignation, Heather's entitled smirk, something broke inside me. Maybe family wasn't worth this kind of betrayal and manipulation. Return my things, I said quietly, or I will take legal action. I'm not bluffing. Get out of my house, my mother replied coldly. When you're ready to apologize for your selfishness, we'll talk. I left without another word, driving home to my empty apartment with tears streaming down my face. The betrayal wasn't just about the furniture. It was the realization that my own mother and sister saw nothing wrong with taking from me, that they felt entitled to the fruits of my hard work, that my feelings and boundaries meant nothing to them. Sitting once again on the floor of my empty living room, I pulled out my phone and called the police. The police response was disappointing, but not entirely surprising. An officer came to take my report, but his expression remained skeptical as I explained the situation. So your mother used a key you gave her to enter your apartment and remove furniture, he summarized, making notes. And this furniture was purchased by you, but she claims it was for your sister? Yes, she stole it. I never gave her permission to take anything. The officer sighed. Miss Parker, I understand you're upset, but this falls into a gray area legally. Your mother had authorized access to your apartment with a key you provided. For emergencies, not to steal my belongings. The problem is establishing criminal intent, he explained. Given the family relationship and her having a key, this is likely to be treated as a civil matter, not criminal theft. So there's nothing you can do? I asked, frustration mounting. I'll file the report, but I recommend consulting with a civil attorney about your options. He handed me a case number. This will at least document the incident, which might help with insurance. After he left, I called my friend Rachel, who worked as a paralegal at a local law firm. She came over immediately, bringing takeout and a bottle of wine. This is outrageous, she said after hearing the full story. The police officer is partly right. It's complicated because she had a key, but it's still theft. Let me talk to one of our attorneys tomorrow. Rachel sat cross-legged across from me on the floor since I had no furniture to offer her. Have you called your insurance company? I hadn't even thought of that. No, but that's a good idea. My renter's policy should cover theft. The next morning, I called my insurance company only to hit another roadblock. After explaining the situation, the agent put me on hold to consult with a supervisor. I'm sorry, Miss Parker, she said when she returned, but after reviewing your policy, there's an exemption for property removed by someone who had lawful access to the premises. Additionally, there's specific language exempting family members who had permission to enter the residence. But she didn't have permission to take my furniture. I understand, but from an insurance perspective, you provided her with a key, establishing a level of access and trust. This falls under our exclusion clauses. Another dead end. That afternoon, Rachel called with feedback from the attorney. He says you have a case for conversion that's basically civil theft, but warns it might be expensive to pursue and could permanently damage your family relationships. They're already damaged, I replied bitterly. He also mentioned small claims court as an option, but the maximum claim amount in our state is $7,000, which is only about half your furniture's value. I felt increasingly desperate. What about a regular civil suit? That's an option, but it will take time and money up front. And even if you win a judgment, collecting might be difficult if your mother doesn't have liquid assets. Over the next few days, I reached out to extended family members, hoping someone might intervene. The responses were mixed and mostly unhelpful. My uncle Paul, my father's brother, was sympathetic but unwilling to get involved. I'm sorry, Natalie, but your mother has always been difficult. I learned long ago not to cross her. My Aunt Jennifer, my mother's sister, was more direct. She raised you, Natalie. How can you even think about suing her? It's just furniture. My cousin Stephanie initially seemed supportive, but then suggested, maybe you could just let Heather have it. Think of it as a gift. Family harmony is worth more than material possessions. Only my father's cousin, Barbara, offered genuine support. Your mother has always favored Heather, even when you were little. I remember your father worrying about it. This isn't about furniture, it's about respect and boundaries. As the days passed with no resolution, I felt increasingly isolated and betrayed. I was sleeping on an air mattress, eating meals, sitting on the floor, and struggling to concentrate at work. The empty apartment was a constant reminder of the theft, and every time I thought about replacing the furniture, I felt a surge of anger. Why should I have to spend thousands more dollars because my family decided they were entitled to take what was mine? One night, about a week after the theft, I broke down completely. Sitting alone on my air mattress, surrounded by the outlines in the carpet where my furniture had been, I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. For the first time, I wondered if I should just give up. Maybe it wasn't worth fighting. Maybe I should just accept that in my family, Heather's needs would always come before mine. The thought left me feeling hollowed out and defeated. This was about more than furniture. It was about a lifetime of being treated as less deserving, less important, less loved. And I wasn't sure I had the strength to fight anymore. 2 weeks after the theft, I was scrolling through Instagram when a post stopped me cold. It was from Heather. A beautifully staged photo of my emerald sectional in her new living room, complete with some of my throw pillows and the coffee table. The caption read, "Home, sweet home. Finally got my dream furniture for my first adult apartment." The comments were filled with compliments from her friends. "Gorgeous. You have such amazing taste. That couch is everything. Where did you find it? Love your style. Can you help decorate my place next?" To each comment, Heather responded as if she had selected and purchased the items herself. To someone asking about the sectional, she wrote, "It's custom. I worked with this amazing designer to get exactly what I wanted. I felt physically ill. Not only had she stolen my furniture, but she was taking credit for my taste and design choices." I clicked through her profile and discovered she had posted several more photos of my furniture, each garnering dozens of likes and admiring comments. Then I saw something that made my blood boil. Heather had announced a housewarming party for the following weekend. "Come celebrate my new place and check out my amazing furniture finds." Without thinking it through, I decided to attend this party uninvited. I needed her friends to know the truth, and I needed Heather to face consequences for her actions. The night of the party, I dressed carefully in a professional outfit, the same one I'd worn for my big client presentation, and arrived about an hour after the stated start time. I could hear music and laughter from the hallway as I approached Heather's door. When I knocked, a friend of Heather's whom I vaguely recognized opened the door. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, Natalie! I didn't know you were coming." "It was a last-minute decision," I said with a forced smile, stepping past her into the apartment. The scene that greeted me was surreal. My furniture, the pieces I had carefully selected and arranged in my own space, was now the centerpiece of Heather's apartment. There were about 15 people milling around, drinks in hand, several of them sitting on my sectional. My reading chair was positioned by the window. My coffee table was covered with snacks and drinks, and my accessories were arranged throughout the space. Heather was in the kitchen area, mixing drinks. When she saw me, she froze, a look of panic crossing her face, before she composed herself and approached me with a tight smile. "Natalie, what a surprise! I didn't know you were coming." "I saw your Instagram posts," I said quietly. "I thought I should see how my furniture looks in its new home." Heather glanced around nervously. "Can we talk about this later? I have guests." "Oh, I think now is the perfect time," I replied, raising my voice slightly. After all, everyone is admiring your amazing furniture finds. A few of the nearest guests turned to look at us curiously. Natalie, please! Heather hissed, grabbing my arm and trying to pull me toward the hallway. I shook her off. No, I think your friends should know that every piece of furniture in this apartment was stolen from me. The sectional, the coffee table, the reading chair, all of it was taken from my apartment while I was at work. A hush fell over the room as people began to notice the confrontation. That's not true, Heather said loudly, her face flushing. Mom helped me move some things that you weren't using. Weren't using? I had just bought them. They were delivered 3 weeks ago. One of Heather's friends, a woman with short blonde hair, looked confused. Wait, I thought you said you picked out that sectional yourself? Before Heather could respond, another friend chimed in. You told me you'd been saving for months to buy that coffee table. Heather's face reddened further. Natalie donated the furniture to help me get started, she declared. Now she's just jealous that everyone likes how I've styled it better than she did. The audacity of her lie stunned me momentarily. Donated? Are you serious right now? Mom fabricated a medical emergency to keep me away from my apartment. Then you two emptied my living room without my knowledge or permission. That's theft, not a donation. You're just jealous that Mom loves me more, Heather spat, abandoning all pretense. You've always been jealous of me. You can afford to replace everything with your fancy job, but you just can't stand to see me have nice things for once. The room had gone completely silent now, everyone watching our confrontation with uncomfortable expressions. This isn't about jealousy, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. It's about respect and boundaries. You took something that didn't belong to you, and now you're lying about it. Everyone, I'm so sorry about my sister's behavior, Heather announced to the room. She's been having some issues lately. Maybe it would be best if she left. As I looked around at the uncomfortable faces of Heather's friends, I realized this confrontation wasn't accomplishing anything positive. Some people looked confused, others embarrassed, but no one was going to take sides in this family drama. I was about to leave when my phone pinged with a message. It was from someone named Tyler, whom I didn't recognize. The message read, "I'm Heather's coworker at the back of the room." I heard everything. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. Check your DMs. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and addressed the room. Enjoy the party and the stolen furniture. Then I walked out, holding my head high despite feeling utterly humiliated. Back in my car, I checked the direct message from Tyler. Your sister has been bragging about getting free furniture for weeks. She told some people your mom bought it for her, told others you donated it, and told me personally that she deserved it more than you. I thought you should know she's been bad-mouthing you to everyone who will listen. Tyler had attached screenshots of conversations where my mother had been telling family members that I was mentally unstable and pathologically jealous of Heather. According to my mother, I had initially agreed to give Heather the furniture, but had changed my mind out of spite after it was moved. Another message came through, this one from my cousin Madison, whom I hadn't seen in years. Just saw your sister's IG posts. Isn't that your furniture? I remember when you posted about buying it last month. What's going on? I briefed Madison on the situation, and her response was illuminating. Aunt Diane did something similar to my mom years ago, took her diamond earrings to be cleaned, and never returned them. Then claimed they were a gift to her from Grandma. This new information hit me like a thunderbolt. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a pattern of behavior, and I had been allowing it to continue by not standing up for myself. Driving home to my empty apartment, I felt a new resolve forming. This wasn't just about furniture anymore, it was about breaking a destructive family pattern once and for all. The aftermath of the party confrontation took a serious toll on me. At work, I found myself staring blankly at my computer screen, unable to focus on designs or client requests. I missed deadlines, forgot a client meeting, and made errors in measurements for a project all completely out of character for me. After a week of this, my boss, Meredith, called me into her office. Natalie, is everything okay? Your work has been concerning lately. I hadn't told anyone at work about the situation with my family, partly out of embarrassment and partly because I didn't want to appear unprofessional. But now, sitting across from Meredith's concerned face, I found myself spilling the whole story. To her credit, Meredith listened without interruption, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief to outrage. "That's absolutely appalling," she said when I finished. "I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. But Natalie, you need to take care of yourself. The Henderson project is due next week, and it's a big one. Can you handle it, or do you need some time off?" The Henderson project was crucial, a high-end residential renovation that could lead to referrals and more lucrative contracts. I couldn't afford to lose it. "I'll handle it," I promised. "I just need to get my personal situation under control." "Take tomorrow off," Meredith suggested. "Get some rest, talk to your lawyer, do whatever you need to do. But when you come back, I need you 100% focused." I nodded, grateful for her understanding, but acutely aware that my family drama was now affecting my professional life. At home, the situation was becoming increasingly untenable. I was still sleeping on an air mattress that slowly deflated throughout the night, leaving me with back pain and inadequate rest. I had no comfortable place to sit, so I spent evenings perched on a kitchen stool or lying on the floor. Even simple activities like eating dinner or watching TV had become uncomfortable and depressing. Financially, I was in a bind. I had spent most of my bonus on the furniture, and what remained of my savings wouldn't cover replacing even half of what was taken. My credit card was still carrying the balance from some of the furniture purchases, so I was essentially paying for items I no longer possessed. I considered financing new furniture, but the thought of going into debt to replace things that had been stolen from me felt like another layer of victimization. And there was the principle of it: why should I have to replace anything when my property had been wrongfully taken? 3 weeks after the theft, the situation escalated further. I was at work, trying to focus on finalizing the Henderson designs, when my receptionist called. "Natalie, your mother is here. She's insisting on seeing you right away." My stomach dropped. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." I did, but she's quite insistent. She's saying it's a family emergency. Given my mother's track record with emergencies, I was skeptical, but I couldn't risk making a scene at work. "I'll be right out." My mother was standing in the reception area, dressed impeccably as always, a determined expression on her face. Several of my coworkers were watching curiously. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I asked quietly, ushering her toward a small meeting room for privacy. "We need to talk," she said loudly. "You've been ignoring my calls, and this has gone on long enough." Once the door closed behind us, I turned to face her. "This is my workplace. Whatever you have to say can wait until after hours." "No, it can't. Your sister is devastated by your behavior at her party. You humiliated her in front of all her friends." "I humiliated her?" "She stole my furniture and lied about it." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," my mother said, raising her voice. "Your obsession with this furniture situation is concerning, Natalie. I'm worried about your mental health." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "My mental health? You committed theft, lied about having chest pains to do it, and I'm the one with mental health issues? See? You're being completely irrational. It was a family favor that you've blown out of proportion. And now you're threatening legal action against your own mother and sister? What would your father think of such behavior?" The mention of my father sent a surge of anger through me. "Don't you dare bring Dad into this. He would be appalled at what you've done." "Your father would want us to be a family," she countered, "not fighting over material possessions." "This isn't about possessions. It's about respect and boundaries, neither of which you seem to understand." My mother's expression hardened. "I didn't want to do this, but you leave me no choice. If you continue with this ridiculous lawsuit threat, I'll have to tell your clients about your recent instability." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" "I've spoken with Dr. Reynolds," she said, referring to a therapist I had seen briefly in college. "He agrees that your behavior shows concerning patterns of paranoia and obsession." That's a lie. Dr. Reynolds wouldn't discuss me with you. That would be a massive ethical violation. Are your clients going to know that? Are they going to want to work with a designer who's in the middle of a mental health crisis? Who's so unstable she accuses her own mother of theft? The threat was clear, and it hit its mark. My career was everything to me. It was what I had built from scratch, without help from anyone, especially not my family. The thought of my mother undermining my professional reputation was terrifying. Get out, I said quietly. Get out of my office right now. Think about what you're doing, Natalie, she said, standing to leave. Is furniture worth destroying your family? Worth risking your career? Because that's what will happen if you don't drop this nonsense. After she left, I sat in the meeting room for several minutes, trying to compose myself. When I finally returned to my desk, I could feel curious eyes on me. How much had my colleagues overheard? What would they think? Would this incident affect how they viewed me professionally? That night, back in my empty apartment, I reached my lowest point. The confrontation at work, the ongoing discomfort of living without basic furniture, the financial strain, the emotional toll, it all crashed down on me at once. Sitting on my deflating air mattress, I seriously considered giving up. Maybe it would be easier to just let Heather keep the furniture. Maybe trying to enforce boundaries with my mother was a losing battle. Maybe the cost to my mental health, my career, what remained of my family relationships was too high. I picked up my phone and started composing a text to my mother. I've been thinking about the furniture situation, and I've decided. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Was I really going to surrender? To let them win after what they'd done? To teach them that they could take whatever they wanted from me without consequences? Before I could decide, my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? I answered tentatively. Natalie? This is Melissa, your mother's sister. I was confused. I knew I had an Aunt Melissa, but I'd never met her. My mother had always told us they were estranged because Melissa was troubled. How did you get my number? I asked. Madison gave it to me. She told me what happened with your furniture. May I come see you? I think we have a lot to talk about. Something in her voice, a gentle authority that reminded me of my father, made me agree. We arranged for her to visit the next evening. Aunt Melissa arrived precisely on time, a tall woman in her early 60s with the same high cheekbones as my mother but kinder eyes. She took in my empty apartment with a knowing look. Diane hasn't changed a bit, I see, she said, setting down a large bag she'd brought. You know about what happened? I asked, offering her one of my kitchen stools, the only seating available. Madison filled me in on the basics. But I've known your mother my whole life, Natalie. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. Over the next hour, Aunt Melissa shared stories about growing up with my mother, tales of borrowed clothes that were never returned, credit cards used without permission, jewelry that mysteriously disappeared. Your mother has always had a fluid concept of ownership, Melissa explained, especially when it comes to things she thinks she or her favorites deserve. Like Heather, I said quietly. Melissa nodded. I met you once, you know. When you were about 4, your father invited me to your birthday party, hoping to reconcile the family. Diane was furious. But I saw even then how she treated you differently from Heather. Why are you here now? I asked. After all these years? Because Madison showed me your sister's Instagram posts, and I recognized that sectional. You posted about buying it last month, didn't you? I follow you online, though I've respected Diane's wishes not to contact you directly. The realization that this unknown aunt had been quietly watching over me all these years brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I've had enough of Diane's behavior, Melissa continued. And I think you have too. So I'm here to help, if you'll let me. From her bag, Melissa pulled out a folded card table and 2 chairs. First, let's get you some temporary furniture. These were in my storage unit. We set up the table and chairs in my living room, not beautiful designer pieces, but functional and much better than sitting on the floor. I have a spare sofa and some other things in storage, Melissa offered. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. You can borrow them until we get your furniture back. We? I asked. Yes, we. I'm on your side, Natalie. And I think it's time someone stood up to Diane. The next morning, I took the day off as Meredith had suggested, but instead of resting, I met with Rachel and her attorney colleague, Michael. Aunt Melissa came with me, bringing a folder of documents. So you're pursuing legal action against your mother and sister, Michael summarized after I explained the situation. Given the value of the items, this would be a civil suit for conversion of property. What are my chances? I asked. Ordinarily, the key would be proving ownership and that the taking was unauthorized, he explained. The challenge here is that your mother had a key and could claim you had given implicit permission. I never gave permission for anyone to take my furniture, I insisted. Do you have receipts for the furniture? Michael asked. Yes, all of them. I paid by credit card. That's good proof of ownership is clear. Now we need to establish that the taking was unauthorized. Aunt Melissa opened her folder. I think these might help. She spread out printed emails and text messages, years' worth of correspondence between my mother and various family members. Madison sent me these, Melissa explained. Your mother has been quite open with certain relatives about her activities. The messages were illuminating. In one email to a cousin, my mother wrote, Natalie finally bought some decent furniture. About time she contributed something to the family. Heather's apartment is so bare, and this will be perfect. In another text, dated just before the theft, Natalie's too selfish to help her sister, so I'm taking matters into my own hands. She'll be at work all day Tuesday. Don't tell her. There were dozens more messages showcasing my mother's sense of entitlement to my belongings and her premeditated plan to take them. These establish intent, Michael said, reviewing the evidence, and they directly contradict any claim that you had given permission. Rachel had been making notes. We should also talk to your building's security. If they have footage of the moving truck or your mother and sister removing furniture, that would further support your case. And the neighbor who saw them, I added, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in weeks. We developed a strategy. First, obtain security footage. Second, take formal statements from witnesses. Third, compile all evidence of ownership and unauthorized taking. Fourth, send a formal demand letter. And finally, if necessary, file a civil suit. That afternoon, Rachel and I visited my apartment building's management office. The security manager, Mr. Alvarez, remembered the day clearly. Yes, I saw your mother and sister with the movers, he confirmed. Your mother said you had asked them to move the furniture while you were at work. Since she had a key and I'd seen her here before, I had no reason to question it. Do you have security footage from that day? Rachel asked. Mr. Alvarez checked their system. Yes, we keep footage for 30 days. I can provide copies for the lobby and elevator areas. The footage was damning. It clearly showed my mother directing movers to remove specific pieces of furniture while Heather supervised. At one point, my mother could be seen on camera talking on her phone, likely during the fake chest pains call to me. Back at my apartment, building on our momentum, we called Lisa, my neighbor who had seen them that day. Your mother told me they were helping you move some things into storage, Lisa recalled. She specifically said you'd asked for their help but couldn't take the day off work. I thought it was nice of them to help. With each piece of evidence, our case grew stronger. By evening, we had assembled a compelling file. Receipts proving ownership, security footage showing the unauthorized removal, witness statements, and my mother's own incriminating messages. I think we're ready for the demand letter, Michael said. I'll draft it tomorrow. It will formally request the return of all items, listing them specifically with their values, and give a deadline of 10 days for compliance before legal action is taken. For the first time since the theft, I felt empowered rather than victimized. With Aunt Melissa's support and our growing evidence file, I finally believed I might actually get my furniture back. That night, sleeping on the pull-out sofa Melissa had brought from her storage unit, much more comfortable than my air mattress, I realized something important. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. And that made all the difference. 3 days later, the formal demand letter was delivered to both my mother and Heather. Michael had drafted a comprehensive document listing every stolen item with its value, accompanied by copies of receipts and a summary of the evidence we had collected. The letter demanded the return of all items in their original condition within 10 days, or legal proceedings would begin immediately. The response was swift and predictable. My mother called in a fury less than an hour after receiving the letter. "How dare you send lawyers after your own family?" she shouted when I answered. "Do you have any idea how upset Heather is? You had multiple opportunities to return my property voluntarily," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You chose not to. If you go through with this lawsuit, you'll regret it," she threatened. "I still have your teenage diaries. How would you like those contents shared with your fancy clients?" The threat caught me off guard. I had forgotten about those diaries, filled with the typical angst and occasional rebellion of adolescence. Nothing criminal, but certainly embarrassing if taken out of context. "Are you really threatening to blackmail me with my childhood diaries?" I asked, incredulous. "I'm simply pointing out that families have many private matters that should stay private. If you insist on making this public with a lawsuit, other things might become public too." After the call, I immediately contacted Michael to add this new threat to our evidence file. "She's now attempting blackmail to prevent legal action," I told him. "This just strengthens our case." The next day, something unexpected happened. Heather called me not to threaten or argue, but to talk. "Can we meet for coffee?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "Just you and me, without Mom?" I was skeptical, but agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. When I arrived, Heather was already there, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "I got the letter," she began without preamble, "and I've been thinking about everything." "And?" I prompted when she paused. "Mom told me you had agreed to let me have the furniture," she said, staring into her coffee. "She said you had bought it intending to help me furnish my new place, but had changed your mind out of spite." "That's completely false," I said. "I never agreed to give you anything." "I'm starting to realize that," Heather admitted. "When I saw all those receipts and the security footage mentioned in the letter, it made me question Mom's version of events." This was the first crack in Heather's unwavering loyalty to our mother, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity. I pulled out my phone and showed her the emails and texts Melissa had provided, our mother's own words revealing her plans and motives. "Oh my God," Heather whispered as she read. "She really did plan to take it all along." "Yes," I confirmed. "And she lied about having chest pains to keep me away from my apartment while you two emptied it." Heather looked genuinely shocked. "She told me you were in meetings and had said it was fine to move the furniture while you were out." For the first time, I saw my sister without the entitlement and attitude, just a confused young woman who had been manipulated as surely as I had been, though in different ways. "Heather, I need my furniture back," I said firmly. "All of it, undamaged." "I know," she sighed. "But Mom's going to be furious. You know how she gets when she doesn't get her way." "That's not my problem," I replied. "And it shouldn't be yours either. We're adults now, we don't have to let her control us anymore." Heather promised to think about everything we'd discussed. It wasn't a firm commitment to return my furniture, but it was progress, the first real communication we'd had in years. My cautious optimism was shattered the next evening when my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced, in a state of cold fury I recognized all too well from childhood. "How dare you turn Heather against me?" she hissed when I opened the door. "After everything I've done for both of you." "I simply told Heather the truth," I replied, blocking her from entering. "Something you should have done from the beginning." "The truth?" she scoffed. "The truth is, you've always been jealous of your sister, always resented any attention or help I gave her. And now you're trying to punish us both with this ridiculous lawsuit." "This isn't about punishment, Mom. It's about consequences for your actions. You stole from me. I did what was best for the family. Heather needed that furniture more than you." "That wasn't your decision to make," I said firmly. "And it still isn't. If you go through with this lawsuit, you will no longer be my daughter," she declared. I will cut you off completely. The threat that had once held such power over me now felt hollow. If being your daughter means accepting theft, lies, and manipulation, then maybe that's for the best. After she left, I received a flurry of messages from various family members. My mother had apparently been busy calling everyone, telling her version of events. "How could you sue your own mother?" texted an elderly aunt. "Family matters should stay private," wrote a cousin. "Your poor mother is devastated by your behavior," came a message from an uncle I barely knew. But there were supportive messages too. "Stay strong," wrote Madison. Aunt Diane pulled similar stunts with my mom. About time, someone stood up to her, texted my father's cousin Barbara. "We're behind you," said a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. The family was polarized, forced to take sides in a conflict that had been brewing for decades. It was painful, but also clarifying, showing who truly cared about fairness and respect, and who was willing to enable toxic behavior in the name of family harmony. As the deadline in our demand letter approached, I received another call from Heather. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, "and I've decided to return the furniture." "All of it?" I asked, hardly daring to believe. "Yes, all of it. But there's a problem. Mom is furious. She says if I return anything to you, she'll cut me off financially." This was a significant threat for Heather, who had relied on our mother's support throughout her adult life. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm moving the furniture to a storage unit tomorrow," she said decisively. "You can pick it up from there. I'll text you the details." "What about Mom?" "I'm going to tell her I sold it," Heather said with a new resolve in her voice. "She doesn't need to know the truth right away. I need some time to figure out my next steps." The next day, true to her word, Heather sent me the address and access code for a storage unit. I went there immediately with Aunt Melissa and a rental truck we'd arranged. There, neatly arranged, was all my furniture, the sectional, coffee table, reading chair, and all the smaller accessories. As we loaded everything into the truck, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and vindication. The pieces were all intact, though the sectional had a small stain on one cushion and the coffee table had acquired a few water rings. Minor damage, all things considered. That evening, with my apartment restored to its former state, I sat on my recovered sectional with Aunt Melissa, reflecting on everything that had happened. "You did it," Melissa said proudly. "You stood up for yourself." "We did it," I corrected her. "I couldn't have done this without you." "What will you do about Diane?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But for the first time, I feel like I have choices. I don't have to accept her behavior anymore." "And Heather?" "That's complicated. She did the right thing in the end, but there's a lot of damage to repair between us. I think we both need time." The civil suit was never filed, as the furniture was returned before the deadline, but the experience had permanent consequences for our family. The dynamics had shifted irrevocably. My mother's power over me was broken, and Heather had taken her first steps toward independence. It wasn't the happy family reunion that movies might portray, but it was something more valuable, a new foundation built on honesty and respect rather than manipulation and control. 6 months passed since the return of my furniture, bringing significant changes to my life and relationships. The immediate crisis had resolved, but the aftermath required careful navigation and ongoing healing. My relationship with my mother remained strained. After Heather returned my furniture, my mother initially refused all contact, making good on her threat to cut me off. 3 weeks of silence followed before she finally called, expecting an apology from me. When I didn't offer one, she alternated between cold anger and attempts at manipulation. "I was only trying to help your sister," she would insist. "Everything I've ever done has been for you girls." I maintained firm boundaries during these conversations. "I understand that's how you see it, Mom, but taking my things without permission wasn't helping, it was stealing." She never fully acknowledged the wrongdoing, instead shifting to a narrative where she was the victim of ungrateful daughters. "After everything I've done for you both, this is the thanks I get." With the help of a therapist I started seeing weekly, I developed strategies for these interactions. I learned to recognize manipulation tactics and not engage with them. I established clear boundaries about what behavior I would accept. Most importantly, I stopped seeking the approval and love that had been withheld for so long. You can't make someone give you what they don't have to give, my therapist explained. Your mother may not be capable of the kind of love and respect you deserve. That's not a reflection on you, it's her limitation. This realization was both painful and liberating. I began to build a life that didn't revolve around seeking my mother's approval or competing with Heather for scraps of affection. My relationship with Heather evolved in unexpected ways. After returning the furniture, she began to question other aspects of our family dynamic. We started meeting for coffee occasionally, awkward conversations gradually giving way to more authentic connection. I think Mom played us against each other, she admitted during one such meeting. She'd always tell me how jealous you were of me, how I needed to be careful around you. She told me similar things about you, I revealed. That you resented my success. That you talked badly about me to others. We compared notes and discovered numerous instances where our mother had deliberately created conflict between us, misrepresenting one sister's words or actions to the other. Why would she do that? Heather asked, genuinely perplexed. Control, I suggested. If we were unified, we might have been harder to manipulate. Heather had her own journey of discovery. She moved out of the apartment with my furniture and found a more affordable place, determined to become financially independent from our mother. She started therapy too, working through the complicated legacy of being the golden child, a role that came with privileges, but also deep insecurity. I never felt good enough, she confessed. No matter what I accomplished, it was never quite enough. I was always one disappointment away from losing her approval. While we were building a new sibling relationship based on mutual respect, Aunt Melissa became a fixture in my life. She provided the maternal guidance I had always craved, without the manipulation or conditions my mother attached to her love. Your father would be so proud of you, Melissa told me one evening, as we shared dinner in my apartment. He always worried about the dynamic between you and your mother. Why didn't he do more to stop it? I asked. A question that had haunted me for years. He tried in his way, Melissa said gently, but Diane was difficult. He thought maintaining peace was protecting you. I'm not sure he was right, but he loved you deeply. Professionally, I thrived. The Henderson project was a success, leading to more high-profile clients and a substantial raise. I was promoted to design director, overseeing a team of junior designers and taking on more prestigious projects. The furniture that had been the catalyst for so much conflict remained in my apartment, but my relationship with these possessions changed. They were no longer just symbols of my professional success, but reminders of my personal strength. Each piece told a story of standing up for myself, of refusing to be a victim. I made one significant change to my living space, installing a state-of-the-art security system with cameras and changing all my locks. No one, not even Aunt Melissa, had a spare key to my apartment anymore. Trust, I had learned, needed to be earned and maintained, not automatically granted because of family ties. The most profound change was internal. Through therapy and reflection, I began to heal from a lifetime of being the unfavored child. I recognized that my worth had never been dependent on my mother's validation or approval. The qualities she had criticized or dismissed, my independence, my work ethic, my boundaries, were actually strengths that had helped me build a successful life. The journey wasn't linear. There were still difficult days, painful conversations, moments of doubt. But there was progress too, a steady movement toward authenticity and self-respect. 6 months after the furniture was returned, I hosted a small gathering in my apartment, a dinner party for Aunt Melissa, Heather, my friend Rachel, and a few close colleagues. It was the first time my sister had been in my apartment since the theft, and I could see her discomfort as she glanced at the familiar furniture. "It looks good here," she said quietly. "Better than it did at my place." "That's because I designed the space around these pieces," I replied without rancor. "They were chosen specifically for this room." As we all sat around my dining table, enjoying food and conversation, I looked around at this new configuration of relationships, some strengthened by adversity, some newly formed, some still healing. It wasn't the family I had grown up with, but it was becoming the family I needed. The incident that had seemed so devastating had ultimately led to necessary truths and changes. My mother's theft had broken open decades of dysfunctional patterns, allowing light into places that had festered in darkness. The healing wasn't complete, it might never be, but it had begun. That night, after everyone had left and I was alone in my apartment, I ran my hand over the emerald velvet of my sectional, feeling its plush texture beneath my fingers. This piece of furniture, like all the others, had been worth fighting for, not just for its monetary value or aesthetic appeal, but for what it represented: my right to set boundaries, to expect respect, to demand justice. Some might say it was just furniture, but for me, it had become something more. A tangible reminder that I deserved to keep what was mine: my possessions, my dignity, my self-worth. And that was a lesson worth every difficult moment of the journey. What about you? Have you ever had a family member take something that belonged to you? How did you handle it? Did you confront them or let it go for the sake of family peace? I'd love to hear your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves, even against family. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, healthy relationships require mutual respect, even among family members.